Father. We thank you for everything you've done. We thank you for our families. We thank you for the connections. We thank you for the reconnections. Father, we thank you that when there is a problem, we know how to get it resolved. We go to you, Father, and we thank you. Father, as we go forth tonight and we go forth in your name's sake, we ask you to be a blessing to our presenters and to the Joy of Life Faith Ministry families and all that is listening tonight for this presentation. Father, I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. Come. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. And I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. One more time. Oh, he has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. Come on, everybody, say praise the Lord. Man, you may be seated. We're just so grateful tonight to be in the house of the Lord. Let me stand here. I know y'all can't see me with Paul there, so we're grateful for those of you that are here presently. We're grateful for those that are online, and we're just so excited. This is another in our series of workshops, and so many questions have come up about home projects and home repair and contractors, and we are just so blessed to have an over 20-year relationship with these two gentlemen and their companies. They were very instrumental. They were the primary supporters, builders. Move in the center, Corte. You're moving the center. All the primary builders of all three of our projects, Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3, and we're just so excited about them. And so tonight, they're going to give a presentation about things that we need to know, things we need to do as we're undertaking projects. They want it to be interactive, and so we want to ask questions. Those of you that are online, you can ask questions, submit your questions online, and we'll replay them here for them to answer, and those of us here in the audience. So certainly we hope you've come with many questions so that you can ask them and get clarity on everything. Those here in the audience, you should have a presentation, and then for those that are online, the presentation will be following here, but we'll also save a copy on our website that you could click on and download and view also. All right, so with no further ado, we're going to have an exciting next hour or so, and I'm pleased to present and introduce to you, if you don't know them, Jim Dennel, who's the principal of BCDM architectural firm here in Omaha, one of the leading architectural firms. He's had decades of experience in the industry. He's a man of faith, and he has just been a great partner for us. And Paul Austin, who is the CEO of the Paul Austin Construction Enterprise. Sister Ellie, did they tell you all the Dennelites? Paul Austin Construction Enterprise, and we are so excited about Paul. He has helped us build all three of our churches, and he also has helped us with a couple of personal projects, so we're excited about all that. So with no further ado, I'm introduce Paul and Jim, and give them a hand.
Well, thank you. Being an architect and a contractor, and Paul attests to this, that we're happily married, but being in this profession, our wives had to take 3 rings. Normally there's only 2. There's an engagement ring, and there's the wedding ring. And being an architect and a contractor, they get suffering. So we're not home all the time. So to start out, I thought I think there's, and this is very common for everybody, is like, when do you need a contractor? What can I do myself? Permits. When do I need an architect? What's an architect do? It's not brick and mortar, so sometimes that doesn't seem to have value. So we'll talk about all that today. We've really kind of broke it down into 3 questions. One is, when do you need a building permit? And then 2 is, when do you need a licensed contractor, a contract, and insurance? And then 3, when is an architect required, and what do they do? Number 4, what is required to apply for a building permit? And then number 5, we're going to go through where can you learn some more. So there's a lot to take in. This is almost like a little elevator speech, so it's going to be a lot to get, but hopefully it'll get you an orientation where you need to go next. And with that, we'll go on to, when do you need a building permit, from Paul.
Thank you. I'm Paul, and glad to be here with you. Before I start on the material, I just thought I'd cover a common sense thing or two. It dawns on me as I'm driving here, everybody knows you need a licensed contractor. Well, we got lots of licensed drivers. They're not all good drivers. You got your doctor has a license, your lawyer, you're still relying on your network of friends, your referrals. Just be patient and ask the right questions of people that have used these people. When I walk into your home to look at your project, more than focusing on the project, I'm analyzing you just like you're analyzing me. I'm trying to figure out if I want to work for you, if just feeling the energy of the house. We're just trying to get a feel, because it's a painful process together, and it should be fun. So just keep that in mind, and I know you guys are doing it too. When we're coming into your house, you don't know us, you don't have a referral, start picking up, because people will say, my probation, they'll give you the signs, and homeowners will give us the signs too, saying things like, my wife has never been happy with a contractor. That tells me that your wife's never going to be happy. So you're picking up on all these things. And obviously that referral from somebody that's used a person more than once is great. Your church, your friends, online. I know a lot of people use Angie's List to find a contractor. So use all those resources and be patient. This is kind of trying times we're in because of the elevated prices, and there's a lack of materials and availability of manpower and materials. So if you have something coming up that you need a deck done for graduation, give them lots of time. Otherwise, it's just painful for you as well. Yes.
Well, and we can go on to the next slide, which, oops, sorry. The city does require licensed contractors. You might want to, there are certain projects of certain scale that Paul can go through. And
So we're pretty much reading this right off of the city's website of what they require, and bear with me, I'm breaking in a new pair of glasses. So types of work that require a building permit, anything structural, meaning moving walls, a deck, anything else you can think of on that?
well, on the structural though too, if it is supporting something. So if you're redoing a closet or something of that sort that is not load bearing, and you can normally tell when you look in the attic or in the basement where the floor structure is or the roof structure, if you see the joists basically, and those are the wood boards that sit on a wall and they overlap and they sit on that wall, that's a load bearing wall. So most of the time it's predictable to see where those are at, but the rest of the walls are not, and you can remove those.
Do you mind if we ask questions while we're going?
Absolutely.
So if someone can't climb up into a ladder or they've got insulation and all that, is there any easy way walking around the house to tell if a wall is low bear, kind of any rule of thumb, or do you really just have to climb up in the ladder?
I would
or in
say
attic?
you know, most of our homes, and I would say probably 75% of what is in the city, if not higher, especially if they were, you know, just built really since the turn of the century. One thing, wood has never decreased in its ability to structure a structure. So usually they would use 2x10s, and if you measure it, if you're in the basement, if you can, or whatever, those would be about 9 1/4 inches, because it's not a full 10-inch. They'll span up to about 14 feet. And so you'll see a lot of homes, you know, where they're just about 14 feet and less. So if your house is double that, which a lot of them are, then down the center is probably where that wall lies. And if you go down in the basement, you should see a beam and then joists going perpendicular to that. That's a good indication. And then the wall above, generally, there may be openings in it, but generally it's a bearing situation.
Okay, so that was anything structural, room additions, roofing and siding, fences, both new and replacement, garages, sheds over 75 square feet, retaining walls over 6 feet high, fireplaces and wood stoves, new dwellings, decks, both new and replacement, basement finish, antennas or towers, window replacements, and any front yard parking.
I'm sorry, I don't want to dominate this, but so if somebody has a contractor, how do I as a homeowner, I mean, I know you guys do it, but how do I as a homeowner know they're pulling all the permits they should pull and that they're following that process? If I ask somebody, you know, to replace a portion of my fence, how do I know, how can I be assured they're doing that?
Typically, we provide the homeowner with a copy of the permits that are pulled, and then if you're doing a formal contract and a given certificate of insurance, all at that time.
So a homeowner should be expecting that if they're doing this type of work from whoever they are. If somebody comes by and say, I'm going to do this for you, they should be expecting that from whoever.
Yes, sir.
That, I was about to say Jack Leg, I shouldn't say that in church. Whoever that person is, they should be expecting that.
Yes, sir.
That's right. And you can check with permits and inspection, give your address, and they'll verify that you do have a permit.
Yeah.
Homeowners can pull the permit themselves as well
Can the homeowners pull the permit themselves prior to finding a contract for whatever project that they're doing? So the permit's already pulled and they just give that information to the contractor?
For some things. So some of the permits require a licensed contractor to pull them, but the city does have access through their website that you can get on and see any permits pulled for a given address, and also that the inspections have been completed.
I got a question. On these lists of all these structural things, rooms and stuff like that, is there a permit for each one of them? Is there many permits, or just one permit that covers everything?
It would be just one permit. Say you're doing a room addition with a deck, it would all be combined on one permit. And when you pull that permit, it'll tell you right away what inspections are required for that permit.
Maybe to follow up on, the homeowner can be the contractor, but you have to do all the work. So you can't subcontract things out. So as long as you meet the code and it's inspected, as a homeowner, you can do everything. But I didn't get gray hair from nothing, and it isn't worth it, believe me. And I've spent more money fixing my mistakes than I did having somebody that could do it properly. So, and then when you get into electrical and plumbing, although it'll be inspected and it should be done properly, it's just not something that you can just pick up like that. It'd be like saying you can do accounting. You probably can, but you might be bankrupt because you didn't add right. So, yes.
I know I'm a very high HGTV fan, and they make you feel like you just throw a wallboard up there if you already have your structural 2x4s up and everything. And I know some people who, my mother is one, she just believes in doing a sledgehammer and throwing up a wall. And so those type of things should be permitted. You're saying if they do all the work, but how would they know they're up to code?
Well, you have to educate yourself. There is a code. So this is the book according to Paul.
Ellie, can you zoom in on that? Yeah.
Okay, this is a book that is around 2.5 inches thick. And it has multiple chapters from basically the ground on up. Everything that that you do in a this is called the IRC, the International Residential Code, and that code goes step by step. And actually, that's what Paul and I use to determine what we need to do. You can actually, these things are called prescriptive in here. So actually, the city's trying to help us the best they can by prescribing this, that we can go through and it'll tell us what spans boards need to be. Obviously, you can hire a structural engineer and try to see in your case that it's maybe different, and that happens sometimes because we want smaller members, but for general, it's in here. So it'll tell you what kind of roofing, how slope or how steep the pitch of the roof can be for certain types of roofs. So if you don't do that, you know, they have inspectors that go through and know this inside and out, and they will tell you you didn't do it right, and you'll have to tear it out. So, but this is how.
Okay, I have a question, because on here, the structure says decks. If I was just replacing a board, and I'm talking things that I know people have done, if I'm just replacing a couple boards, does that take a permit? Or if I totally have to tear it down?
Only if you're taking it down and replacing it.
Okay.
So, for general maintenance, you're not required. And one more thing on that book, that touches on electrical and plumbing, but there's a book that thick for plumbing and a book that thick for electrical too. Yeah, it's and the electrical and the plumbers, inspectors, don't let anything slide. I mean, it's pretty exacting.
I love the questions, but I do want you guys to get through the rest of the presentation. But we love the
No,
questions.
this is great. We're this fine.
Is there a specific code for houses that are built in a specific subdivision? Do they all have to follow the same code as far as how they're built and the spaces and things like that?
Well, there's you're referring to probably two things there. One is the building code, and the other is the zoning code. So they're kind of two different things. Under the building code, that's everything that, you know, builds the building, if you will. It's all the materials included in that. Now, in zoning, that is basically how it fits within the context of the city. So there are different neighborhoods or zones. Even within a neighborhood, you'll have multiple zones. For residential, those are R1 all the way through R8, I believe it is. And each one, starting at R1, is probably the most restrictive, meaning the front yards have to be so far back. Those are more of the estate type of homes. R2 then comes down from that. And then, you know, you get into about 4 on down, it's more dense. So a lot of homes really in the older part of the city have a lot of that, so they're a little higher density, smaller lots, 5,000 square feet and such. I think that's what you were talking about on that setback, yeah. You bet.
All right, I'll
Okay.
keep moving here. So, yeah, when do you need a building permits? Building permits are not required for painting or wallpaper. playhouses and dog houses, new concrete under 200 square feet, so that's pretty much just a repair, carpet or flooring, cabinets and countertops, swing sets and play equipment, and retaining walls 6 feet and under.
She tell I said to stop asking questions. All right,
No.
quick question. All right. You might have seen when you drove in, we last week got a concrete panel replaced in one of our driveways. It was sinking. We had a contractor bid. He didn't come through, and then when he finally came through, he said he couldn't do the work because he needed a permit because it was so close to the sewer. And he was kind of flaky, so we fired him and went with the next bid, and the guy just did it. He said he didn't have to do that. So we were okay with that, but you know, what is there a, you know, concrete, you said under 200 feet. I think that panel's under 200 feet, but is there a, it was 187? 190, so just barely under 200 feet. So I don't know if there's a connection with being close to a sewer or something like that.
I am not familiar with anything that would require a permit for what you did.
The 200 is new. So if you were to add 200, that would, of course, we're talking residential, but there is other codes for commercial. But 200, if you could put a patio in the backyard, 10 by 20 patio. So that's really, I think, why they do that. You do anything more than that, then the reason they really want to, more than, you know, what does it take to put concrete down, right? But it's impervious coverage, meaning that you are now having runoff, and with sustainability and things of today, you have to have so much of grass area or non-pervious areas, or pervious areas. So there's a ratio there. So, and they want to make sure that's why you have to get that code or a permit. Great.
So our next one was, when do you need a licensed contractor, contract, and insurance? So according to the city of Omaha, every contractor on a permitted job needs to be licensed and insured, and the city requires a bond in case we completely flake out. So, so the answer to that would be any job that I would be performing for you that requires a permit, then you technically need a contractor unless you're gonna take it on yourself. And some people are definitely qualified to do that. I would always ask for proof of insurance. It's just a good way to go. I personally, because I do a lot of referral business and work for the same people repeatedly, a lot of times my contract is a handshake. And I have the mentality that I can't leave a job bad. I mean, that's just the way I'm wired. But if you don't know them, get a contract, get something signed to protect yourself. And if you've ever seen Mike McKnight, don't pay anybody up front. If they need a deposit, give them a deposit when materials show up, and like on a roofing job, because that's the one you see the most. Roofing, the materials are not 50% of it necessarily, so always protect yourself. A reputable contractor won't question that and won't force that issue. If they're really screaming for money, walk away.
So how do we know if a contract is licensed or not? Is there a website or something that you could check, or?
Yes, you can track that through the city as well.
Yeah, great. You want to talk about builder's risk at all, or?
Yeah, so on a new construction home or a major remodel, sometimes I will pull it, sometimes the homeowner will pull it, but it's called builder's risk insurance. And I don't know the ins and outs of the insurance industry, but it's a protection that there's always kind of a gray area. If your house burns down and I'm in the process of building it, we got to wait until we figure out who caused it, if it was an act of God or if I did something negligent. But either way, this builder's risk insurance will cover for you. Yep. And on new construction homes, I usually provide it. Of course, you pay for it. But it's worth asking about, or at least call your insurance agent, say, hey, I'm having a major renovation at my house. What do I need to do?
I would say, for the benefit of everybody else here, the work we did at 1106, you'll know what 1106 is. I think Paul actually did the work for us at 1106. After it was done, I told them about that the home was remodeled, and they made me pay for insurance for that time, even after it was done. But I said, fine, that's fine, because they were kind of mad that I didn't call them ahead of time.
Yep.
If it is an addition or remodel to an existing, I highly suggest getting your builder's risk through the homeowner. You're paying for it one way or the other, but when you have different, it seems like, well, they should cover it, the contractor. Once something happens, really no party is involved other than insurance people and lawyers, and they really don't care about what has happened, and one is trying to get the other to pay, and you can be held up. So if it's all under one policy, obviously, and then you just pay a premium for that, right? And it's just good to have, if there's theft, you said it, gray areas, we just really don't know what could happen, and that way you're only talking to one person.
And like if you, this one's just in my head, maybe a $300,000 house, the policy for a year-long build is like $580. So it's not very expensive. And then they usually, like on theft, once materials are delivered to your project, they're usually the owner owns them, and that's on commercial and residential typically. So if we have a bunch of lumber delivered, it all gets stolen. I mean, it gets sticky, obviously, but that's what that's for. That builder's risk is there to cover you.
Yeah. Great.
We did bring some copies of just a very basic residential contract that you're welcome to, and it's on here, but if anybody wants a physical copy, we have it. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but it's my contract that I use is very simple and kind of in layman's terms. So,
and my position on contracts isn't really legal. Sometimes and I'm the worst one, what I'm saying, not everybody understands. And what other people are saying, they think they said it, but they didn't. I think contracts help delineate your understandings. And, when you're starting out, everything is good. If you have issues just on when you begin, you're really going to have issues down. Well, I thought, you said, and who knows how it was said and in what context and how people take things. So if you delineate it, somehow it just gets impressed in your head on both sides, and you build good expectations. So, is that it?
So the next slide is question 3. When is an architect required and what do they do? So one example that we have is I started a project and we were just doing a basement finish. And then in the process, they decided they're gonna move some structural walls upstairs. They wanted to extend a garage and needed some zoning. And so then I'm done. I gotta get an architect. So that's when.
Yeah, actually, it was a project that we worked on, a good friend, and we built a house together. That's how even we got started, but together. And it was expanding, and, you know, Paul, they were saying, well, we want these extra spaces, and you know, the obvious thing is you had to do an addition. And then that's when Paul called me in and I talked to them. And architects are kind of ideators. They are ideators. So if you're experienced enough, you kind of can see and feel what's behind the walls, if you will, and what you can and can't do. In this case, they were ready to put on like a 200 square foot addition and a little Rubik's cubing within the existing that they had. They didn't have to do that. So just the involvement of myself on that, saved a $200,000 addition. Now it bubbled over to a screen porch, but that's when I get involved, and luckily Paul and I work seamless because in the industry, architects usually are independent, and then the contractor's independent, and the owner is in the middle. So they contract separately with each, and over my 40 years, that is unfair that our industry does that. So it should be combined, and so you may find some people that can do that. When we are working together, my effort reduces immensely, because probably 50% of what you're charged on architectural fees in regular conventional residential construction, half of that is just covering everybody's legal side. And so you don't know what you're buying, so the drawings say specifically, how high the outlet is, what type of outlet, what color outlet, whatever. A lot of those things can be avoided if you work together. And like I say, about 50%. Did you have a question?
As a general contractor, how do you vet your subcontractors?
I'm sorry?
How do you vet your subcontractors, or how you pick your subcontractors as a general contractor?
Well, for me, I've been fortunate enough to work with the same guys for most of the years, and it just builds that cohesion, and we all know what to expect from the other guy. If I get a sub that's out of my normal group, maybe we got a specialty sub coming in, then I'm back to that referral basis, and then I'm checking credentials and everything too. But for the most part, most of the contractors I know work with a set group of subs just so they get a set result at the end, kind of maintain quality.
We have a question from the internet, and I guess it's for both of you. It says, what should we what should a homeowner or a project owner have in place before calling either an architect or a contractor to make your lives easier?
I'm always happy when they have just a broad idea, you know, even internet pictures, anything to help us grasp their concept. Some people are so far as having individual items selected, which is great.
I think earlier the better. Don't feel that you have to solve the problem to involve them, because like we just talked about this one, everybody thought that maybe an addition was the thing to do. More so, what is it you're trying to accomplish? What is the overall goal of your project? We want a special place that does this. So a lot of times we go way too far as homeowners trying to predict what that solution is, and then we tell either the contractor or an architect, and they haven't vetted some of the other things. And the best thing is, I assumed, you know, it's gonna be better that it's in the northwest corner because the electrical panel is there or something. Well, did you know that the plumbing's running on the southwest corner, and it's gonna be a problem? So a lot of things you just don't see, and professionals can help you really attest to things. And then if you have a budget, I think the worst thing that we have or encounter is that hopefully you could be upfront and just say, look, this is all I can spend, and I don't want to spend it all. And let's go from there, opposed to going through the whole process. You get the design, and well, you should have known that this is all I had. Or what I hear a lot of times is, well, I guess we can go a little further than that. Let's add this and this. And I mean, I had one house where he kept it from me, and at the last minute he says, and then we're gonna put a garage on the front. And I'm like, what? And I said, well, you can't do that. It's in the front yard and da-da-da-da. Oh, well, we already went and got an approval from the planning board. That would have been nice to know. And you know what? I don't like it. I mean, you know, I drive by it and it's just like, that didn't look right. And I probably would have had a different solution that they would probably have liked, but he was stuck on that. So, yeah, you work as a team, hopefully. Go ahead.
You made a statement about architects and the contractors. How can, you mentioned that sometimes they're not working together and the homeowner's in the middle. How can an architect or a contractor find that team-like solution for the homeowner's problem? I know you guys got a great relationship, but you might have a new person that's, oh, I want to be a star architect. How can he find a good contractor to work with him on different projects?
Well, unfortunately, ego, you know, to be honest with you. I tell everybody I don't have a reputation, so I don't have anything to lose. But, you know, you do have to come in and see the value of everyone. And when you come in as your superior and you will listen to me, then a contractor cannot give you good advice because it counterdicts somebody that thinks they know what they're saying and they don't. So it has to be open and honest. As a homeowner, hopefully you can test that. If you get kind of indications that, you know, all contractors are dummies, I have a degree or whatever, so what? You know, that's not important, because we've learned how we practice after we got our degrees, not when we got the degrees. So, and if you're not practicing right with the right people, how do you know how anything goes together? And a lot of people don't, and they force water to go uphill.
I would think that, from my experience, most architects have a group of contractors that, especially in the residential, that they like to work with. So I think most architects in town would steer you to their preferred contractors, good or bad, but I think they have that relationship where, working relationship.
Right.
And in the commercial
And
world too.
some even have on board designers or architects, so.
This is a question. Question for architect. There are a lot of drafting firms that do residential work. What would be the advantage of hiring an architect if the architect technically are not needed for residential?
Great question. So, we will call them designers if they're not registered. You do not need to be registered to design a residence up to 10,000 square feet. After that, then you do have to have a license. So there are, and what you want, and probably getting us back on track, is that's what we do, is produce the documents for permits and inspection. That's what you have, because you have to draw a plan, elevations, wall sections, indicating all the materials, how it's put together. And then the contractor will use that to build from. Now, a lot of times, you know, you're just getting the permit and it just generally states what it will be, and then a lot of it gets figured out in the field. So, good question. I don't think you don't have to use a hammer to kill a fly, meaning if it's not a high design and a high, I mean, it's pretty, all you need is the drawings, sure.
Ken, I know Elder Jefferson has a question. I know we want to try and move on, but I want to give an example testimonial for that question. So those of you here in the audience, my mother's home had a fire in February in New York, and I imposed upon Jim, and he was so gracious to do so. Even though his wife was going through an illness, he was gracious, and he actually went with me to New York. And we went to the home. The fire, the electricity was out, water's off, the heat's off, windows are boarded up. And I think, Jim, he had his flashlight thing. I think he spent about 3 or 4 hours in the dark, in the cold, in this smoke, still smelling house. Because I told him I was trying to accomplish some things to build back better. And he came back, whoever asked that question, BQ, he came back with some amazing ideas I would have never thought about. And he sketched them out and said, I think you could do this, I think you could do that, you can move this here, you can move that there. I mean, things the house is 100 years old. I grew up in the house, never thought about those things. But it was such a great idea. We're actually now progressing Jim's ideas through the New York bureaucracy, but we're progressing his ideas. So the benefit of it is, I think an architect can see things that I can't see, and then provide creativity and ideas. So I think that's one of the benefits.
Thank you.
Oh.
And there are several firms in Omaha that are just draftsmen. I don't think they even have an architect on staff. If you just want a square box garage addition, they can do that for you and prepare the documents. But if you need design features, then you need an architect to get you that eye. And we realize most people aren't visualizing when they look at a plan. They're not seeing. I see it built in 3D. Jim's in like 5D, so he's got that gift. So we've done some houses where I think Jim even did the plans that had a staircase drawn. It's a bunch of lines, looks like a ladder, has up on one plan and down on the other. And we start building it, and the people said, "Oh, I didn't know there was going to be a staircase here." So we don't know what people see, and architects have the ability with modern programs to walk you through on screen a 3D house and he can look up and look down, and you get a feel what your house is gonna be like. So that's a great
Yeah,
technology.
that really helps to predict everybody's expectations. So it's surreal, though. I mean, in the old days when we did it just two-dimensionally and, with pencil and paper, and then now, when we literally, you live in it as you're designing it, and then when you walk in the space, it's like you've already been in it. It's just amazing, so I'm glad that I had the ability to experience that. There was a question about the subcontractors, and I might follow up on, a lot of times we feel that multiple bids saves you money. I've learned in some cases, depending on who the team is, I've found that you just get the lowest, highest bid. And meaning that sometimes the commodity of work that, let's say, Paul gives maybe an electrician, it might be 75% of his work, and they trust each other, they know each other, they know that they're going to get paid, and they give them a special break, Now, in work that is, let's say, kind of, overly commodity, and you can get in, anybody, yeah, you can bid those, and I think you do that too, and everybody, sees exactly what's going on, and they can do the work, and then you might get a lower price from them. But sometimes there's a lot, especially in remodel projects, they don't even want to deal with it, and so getting people, to see it as a real project, but they see it more, these subs that would, let's say, work for a contractor all the time, they see Paul as the whole project on multiple homes. So then you get the real break, if you will. So,
And we do, on pricing, we do that a lot with people that we do repetitive business for. We just feel like it's a better way of doing business where we're more transparent. We show every invoice and then put a markup on top of that, so there's no surprises on the homeowner's end. But by the same token, I'm not taking the risk for your house. So it's a partnership to get to that point. And if we do, some people just want a hard bid number, and that's the only way they're comfortable. So then we have to try and guess everything that's going to go wrong on your project and bill for it. And if none of those things go wrong, well, then I win. If everything goes wrong, I probably lost. But it seems to me a fairer way to do it, that we just are transparent, and if there's a problem, you know about it.
yeah, absolutely. I think, and hats off to Paul, because he does that, and you've done that for at least 25 years that I know of, and some decide, well, maybe I'll just make more money this other way, and but everybody gets treated fair, and obviously if you're a client that wants to benefit from somebody else's misfortune, I hope they come to church, and find out. So it'll catch up. One thing on the where you do need an architect or somebody that can draw the plans, you'll need it for the zoning compliance. So we talked earlier, and make sure they do that, because sometimes that gets dropped off, and I'll admit my faults. I remember one of the first residential projects I did, I put on a beautiful addition for this house and a great solution. Guess what? It was in the front yard setback. And I got the drawings kicked back from the city saying, you're 5 feet in the front yard. Well, I had to redraw and rethink that whole, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even check that. And then also, you can assume what the the zoning is for a particular property, but right across the street, it might be a different zoning. So, especially in the more in the city area, they'll have a mixture from R2 down to R4, and you don't know which one, and your side yards get smaller and whatever. So you need to do that. Also, the compliance with just the codes. So, just we talked earlier. So that's why you need a contract or a architect. Talking too much.
Is the HOA, if you have an HOA in your neighborhood, is that separate from the zoning requirement, or is that
It
part
is. That HOA is developed during the development process when that neighborhood's getting built. They, a lot of that's done with the developer and a legal team.
The next slide that says question 3, so the permit documentation, that's when you do need somebody to draw it up. And the city requires the minimum of plans, elevations, and sections. Let's see. Whoops. So that leads to 4, which is what is required for a building permit. So if you're doing an addition to your building or house, you'll need a site plan, floor plan, the elevations that indicate the materials and the height and the mass of what you're doing, and then a wall section. Basically, a wall section is just like if you took a big sawzall and cut right down the wall, what would you see inside that wall? So we draw that to indicate, on the inside, you have 1/2-inch drywall, on the outside, you'll have maybe hardy plank siding and everything in between. And then we also will have to do a stair section. So, and then if you have a chimney and it's fire burning, you'll need that in those drawings. Any decks or covers will be needed on the drawings. And then if it's a duplex, you have to indicate the firewall. And then there is a certificate that you have to fill out, which is called the res check. And basically what that is the performance of the house or building to meet the energy codes of today. So it's, a homeowner can do that if you know all the components, but basically somebody fills that out. It's takes me about an hour, but you click in all the R values and U values, which is the energy numbers for the different building materials, and then it'll tell you if you pass or not. It is sticky just to tell you, in remodeling. Sometimes we'll go in and people want to open up a big window on the outside. That may trigger, even though you're not doing an addition, it may trigger you to do a res check just to make sure the whole building or house, because it's grandfathered in until you change those openings. And sometimes if it isn't, then you got to come in compliance with different types of insulation and things of that sort to make it good.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
As COVID is affecting material prices, once the contract is signed, how would you handle subs wanting to raise prices?
Once in a lifetime deal, right? I mean,
Hope so.
and I think you have to be very cautious at this time. That's where I think the transparency comes through, so you know what those prices are. You build a budget and it's based on that, but we've seen it go up just in 1 week, maybe 25%, and then it go down.
Now, do you have a contract with your subcontractors as far as each particular job, or?
So my contractor subs, because I use them repeatedly, it's kind of a blanket contract. And that seems to make my insurance company and everybody happy. But if we're doing that special sub or something, then we definitely do contract.
While we're talking about this, we're dealing with a lot of people who are in the lower economics, especially our senior citizens, who are being taken by a lot of people who know all these things, and they'll pull out that big fat book and scare them half to death. What are the things that, as they're living in their homes, probably that they bought when they were younger, and it needs to be brought up to code, how does a senior citizen or someone who doesn't have the economics to go into deep depth still get the architect, still get the contractor they need without being scammed so much? A lot of our senior citizens, we find we have to protect them by having somebody else help them. What would you advise to them as they start looking at, they bought these homes when they were young, they need to be upgraded, something might go wrong, but then that's when they're often taken advantage of?
My first thought would be the city inspectors are in their office in the mornings, and you could call down there if it was plumbing related or electrical related or any kind of building code. You could get the appropriate inspector, and most of them will bend over backwards to help you. I know of a few situations where they've just made a stop during their day by somebody's house to help them resolve those matters, to give them a comfort level on what they actually need.
I'd go by referrals. First prayer. And then, ask them what church they go to. They start squirming a little, you might want to think twice. But anyway, seriously, it only takes a couple questions, especially if you get hung up when you're asking for a recommendation. And then too, you've got some volatile owners that are not making good judgments too, because they were trying to take them and didn't get what they wanted. So, but it's like anything, I think.
The lumber yards and material suppliers are a good source too. If you ask those guys, I'm building a deck, can you give me a referral? They'll usually give you guys that they know good things about. Right, like Miller Lumber, Builder Supply, Christensen Lumber, that deal with big volumes. They know who's building lots of decks, who does a lot of kitchens. I think they would be a very good resource.
And I know the owner of Miller Lumber. He's a great man, good man. He would do everybody right.
I would just like, maybe this is for the architect. How do you determine whether it's most cost effective to build onto an existing home or building, or just to go purchase a new one? I mean, is that kind of what you do to help homeowners through the architect piece?
Yeah, I believe they're capable of doing it. It's if they've done enough of it, they should understand the value and resale. But if they don't, I'd involve, if you have a friend that's a realtor. But there's really kind of bread and butter things that you can test, and that's bathrooms, obviously kitchens. I don't think you can go wrong updating those. Bedrooms, that when they're added, even if you won't use them as a bedroom, but it complies to be a bedroom, then you go into a whole different classification of your appraisal. And so I think that's important. But I like to design to a budget opposed to budget a design. And sitting down and having a reality check before we even draw anything, you know, what are we talking about here, you know, in regards to costs? Because you can marry a design and then it just seems like you're hacking it away. So it's really important to understand where your costs are. And I will ask that personally, that question. What is this gonna do for your resale? And how long are you gonna live here? If this is your forever house, I've heard that before, but, and they say yes, then you'll wear it out, you know, 20 years, 30 years, you're gonna have to remodel it again, you got your money's worth. If you're gonna move in two years or whatever, you're just, it's like a car, you know, you just, the moment it goes off the lot, it depreciates what you put into it. Fortunately, real estate is going up, so you may get it back. But I think it's important what you're really doing to the house. And then if you customize too much, then you're getting yourself out of a market. So, like pools, you know, everybody's, oh, wow, you got a pool. Well, I'd say the majority of people would say, I don't want that maintenance, and you know, I don't want my kids falling in it, or I'd rather have a backyard, whatever. So you narrow the market of who may want your property. So.
Sometimes it seems like the personal reasons drive an attachment to, for the projects we do, the large remodels. They want that neighborhood because they lived there when they were kids, or whatever the attachment is. And even when Jim and I have both been saying this is not worth it, you should tear it down, don't salvage the house, or just move, sometimes that attachment seems to override common sense maybe, but that's their choice.
Yeah.
But usually Jim or I have a feel for what a project is based on square footage. So in just a few minutes, you can come up with a ballpark number to know what things are gonna cost.
Absolutely.
One more question is, who determined the zoning codes or the building codes and stuff like that? You know, I just wondered who determined all this. What, because I know you might have ideas, the contractor might have ideas, but who be the final person that determined what the code's supposed to be?
Well, in Omaha, during the 80s, they decided to, because it was confusing on, you know, how you would build. Nobody was going to build beyond 72nd Street, if you've been here long enough. And all of a sudden, these different kind of, you know, acreages that were divided up into home, you know, so, and then the city annexed them and whatever, and they said, well, we've got to have some type of organization that improves the value of the neighborhoods. So they tried to do that. The thing is, though, what can seem prescriptive everywhere, you know, there's always an exception. So, but the city was the one that did that, and they just, some of it was just a dart to say, this area needs to be this. But for instance, I did a home called Heavenly Acres that was built in the 80s. Everybody had a circular drive in it, and by the zoning now, and it was R1, a higher rating, so you couldn't build in the front yard. You had to have a front yard landscape buffer area, whatever, so that there was like no way to do a circular drive. And when we went to, you can appeal things, and doesn't mean that you're fighting. It just means, hey, let's look beyond what it seems prescriptively here. So what I was able to do is I took an aerial and I counted all the homes in the area that had circular drives in non-compliance. And when we presented that, which the board just, you know, loved, said, you know, it was almost like over half were circular drives. So it wasn't deteriorating the neighborhood. They just didn't want, tarmacs out in front. And I get that if it's just green land, but so they will change. I think there's a code. It's called I want to say, is it R535? I could be wrong on which R it is, but and it's in North Omaha for the lion's share of it, that they want to get 35-foot front yards, and we did some homes in the Miller Park area. Well, it would look ridiculous to be another 10 feet past everybody else. And so there is an exception if your adjacent properties are at that. You could take the average and be, they want it to look right. So everybody's trying to do the best thing. So hopefully that answered the question.
And on those building codes, those are written by a national council, but each individual city or county can adopt whatever portions. So not everybody, like Sarpy County is different than City of Omaha, which is different than Douglas County, Washington County. So we change what we do in each area when we build too.
Yeah, great point. So each city subscribes, and most of them subscribe to the International Building Code because they don't want to draft this. So they do this, which is multiple pages, and their amendments. They'll either answer some of the questions that they'll say it's up to the local municipality in here, and then they'll answer it so they don't want to get a call all the time. But they're very good about clarifying it. And some they take exceptions to. For instance, like plywood or green plywood foundations. City will not accept that here, so.
And I think our latest 2 building codes, we're trying to get fire suppression in every new house. And that's something that the City of Omaha backed out on too, just for the expense, so.
But in Valley, and I know this is in Omaha, but Valley, Paul came up with a new product that you don't have to do deep footings. They're called insulated footings, and there's a lot of technical studies, and the City of Valley accepted that as an alternative, and now I think anybody can do it.
Yep. Right? And it just was a helpful solution to us building on sandy soil.
Great. Anybody have any others? Well, the 5th question is where can you learn more and find out how wrong we were? Don't mess me up with the facts, my mind's made up. But you can go online and you go to permits.cityomaha.org, and you'll get everything you need for permit submittals and requirements. There's a whole tab on the side. If you just click away on those, you're able to find out all the information. You can download. I did bring a flash drive. I can give it to you, but it has all the documents that I downloaded. Those that are going to attempt some things on their own, or if you are contractors or whatever, kind of want to know how to do it, you can actually, they have drawings on there, especially if you're doing like a garage for instance. Pretty much, they have this drawing, you just fill in the lengths and whatever, so you don't need to go through and get those all drawn up to try, which I think is a great thing, because that's a little extra work that you don't need to pay for. And then the municipal codes that I was just talking about, if you go to cityofomaha, again.org, but the homepage, look for first municipal code, you hit that, and then that'll tell you everything from you can't spit on sidewalks to building codes. But remember chapter 55, and that is our building code chapter, or not, the zoning. And in there, they've got all the different, like R1, R2, R3, and they explain the setbacks, all those things. If you're like, well, can I put something in the rear yard here, you know, and how far can I go? You can literally take your tape measure and try to figure out how much you could add on one side or the other. And then you'll find other regulations like fences and things of that sort that you can do. Pools, if you're into that. And anyways, so where do you go to figure out what your zoning is? And I love this map, but you go to the Douglas County Assessor's site, and then there's a little tab there that says valuation and lookup. So this is kind of fun if you want to find out what everybody's paying in taxes. So, and but anyways, you go on there. There is a click on where you can put the zoning map on, and it'll show you basically if you're whatever R you are. And then also you can put on the lot dimensions, and it'll give you your lot dimensions. So you can kind of, I do that first off when somebody calls and says that they're going to do something. I can automatically get a sense of what we can and can't do. So.
And for those of us that are nosy, on the Douglas County Treasurer website, you could also find out what anybody paid for any property. For those of us that are nosy, we do that.
That is totally correct, yeah. And what's kind of neat, too, is they have just a line diagram of the outline of your house. So if you go into the extended view, I think it's called, so that's, you know, I've started some of my sketches just off that, so.
Okay, I got one more last question. And on these, on international building codes and zoning codes, every locale, like I say in California, New York, Illinois, North Carolina, that's the best way to check out what they got in the areas. Put different codes, because I know Omaha have a different code than it might be in Chicago or something like that.
That's right.
Okay.
So if you get into their city, and I've just Googled city codes in whatever city, it'll download or tell you what they do. If it's the IRC, now you got like the International Residential Code, but different cities adopt different years at different times. So we were 2006 for the longest time, and then went to 15. Now we're 18. In the last probably 4 years or so. Yep.
Yeah, so Jim and Paul, you've done, this has just been tremendous. And we kept you over time. We kept the live stream audience over time, but it's just been tremendous. Maybe two final things, and we'll quit, and maybe put you on the spot a little bit. Number one, so I know we've had like a 2-decade, I think, experience with you guys. I think it was actually 2002 when we started the project, phase 1, with BCDM and Bob Maybury, and Paul was a construction superintendent. So it's literally been 2 decades. And I know, Jim, you are like me in semi-retirement, but not really retirement. but
63 hours a week
not
was the
retired.
last quarter. That was the average.
and I know, Paul, you are tremendously busy, and my wife needs me to say, don't put nobody else's projects before you finish ours. You know, so don't take nobody else's projects. All right, but if you guys were not available, and I could vouch for both of you, and if anybody has any project, you're at the top of my list. But if you guys weren't available, are there any names of architects or construction companies in Omaha that you would say, hey, you can't go wrong going with them? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you know, are there any names you would throw out there?
Yeah. Omaha, I think we're really blessed. We have a bunch of skilled people, and I can't think of a name right now that's not busy. And if you can find somebody that's not busy, I'd be a little worried right now that they're quality. Every now and then you might hit a guy that lost a job or something, but everybody I know right now is mostly booked out for this year.
Depending what the scale of the project is, if we're just talking like simple additions and things of that sort, Eric, you know, and you're on the board for the Bridge Network, which out of that, it's a nonprofit that we started to really promote workforce development and community redevelopment through, and under that is the Apprentice Academy, and we are we hire interns, and we are training them from A to Z in the proper way to learn, integrated, so it's design and construction, not separately, which turns a lot of heads, but that's what we're doing. And so I would say if there is a project, you know, don't be afraid to call. I could probably align some things. We're bringing some of those projects into the academy for them to do. Eventually, I'm hoping that we will have a resource for people, you know, because nobody serves projects really kind of under 500,000, you know, and we just, you know, you just need something, you know, for a couple, $300, you know, just to get your permit and go. And if it's just a bedroom addition or something like that, or just help through the process. So, yeah, if you want to give out my name, I'd be more than happy to, you know, help in that regard. And
So, and one final comment, and again, I'm putting y'all on the spot, but can you share with our membership and those that are online any comments, good, bad, or indifferent, about our campus building that you guys really helped build for us? What would you share about our campus building, good, bad, or indifferent?
For me, I really enjoyed working with you folks, and great sense of community and family here, and I was happy to see Joe. No, it's you guys got a good thing going here. Yeah, it was fun to watch you guys start from the Mins and get to where you are. And I didn't know the railroad had a church at our first board meeting. Everybody on the board handed out a business card, and later I was looking at it going, wow, UP has a church.
well, one thing I'd say about it is you helped pilot and pioneer integrated project delivery, if you will, because BCDM acted as both the contractor and the architect, and Paul was willing to join the team to be the on-site management of that, and we were able to streamline things so that, you know, you're not paying redundant costs. and getting everybody's input all the way through design and into construction. I think that was unheard of in 2003, I believe, when we kind of launched that. And I think it's becoming more the way it's going to be. And so thank you for allowing that opportunity. And I think it's going to better our industry.
Let's give Jim and Paul, and they did a tremendous job, and thank you so much, and we appreciate that. And for those on live stream, hopefully you've been blessed. And again, if you want the handout, you can get it by going to www.jerrywellfaith.com. And once again, give Jim and Paul a wonderful